I'm sure some of you really were waiting to hear my thoughts on the election. So here is the rant you've been waiting for. Now, hours after Trump officially reached the 270 mark, and it was a done deal that he would be elected to be our 47th president, I did release a parody joke video on this channel. So check that out if you haven't already, just in case you want to laugh for a few minutes. And judging by some of the comments, people either get the joke and are playing along with it, or they don't understand what the word parody means. But given my busy work schedule, now that I'm in the truck 6 to 7 days in a week, I knew I could not release this rant immediately. So I wanted to make sure I got this released when the final tallies were done, or close to it. So by November 7th, 2 days after the election was final, Trump led the popular vote with 72.64 million votes, over Harris' 67.95. It goes without saying that no matter which side you supported or didn't, Trump winning the popular vote was something most did not expect, including yours truly.
We got our asses kicked.
As much as people want to say that, oh, Trump got her by a landslide, it wasn't even close. Electorally, it was still a coin flip. And when you look at the key battleground states such as Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, and the big one, Pennsylvania, Trump only beat Harris by a couple 100,000 votes at the most. Others were usually by around 20 to 50,000. Now, that's not that much when you consider it. Any one of those states could have gone the other way. You compare to 2020, states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania, those flipped from Trump to Biden. And again, were won by very narrow margins, some by less than 20,000 votes. Whereas 2020 did show a huge blue wave, especially in the blue stronghold states. I mean, California, my home state, accounted for 11 million out of Sleepy Joe's 81 million votes. But then you have to remember that even states like Texas and Florida, states that were considered red strongholds, Trump only won those states by a few 100,000 votes at the most. But as a result of Biden's disastrous term in 2024, the pendulum swung back even harder for Trump. And that red wave that was predicted as far back as the 22 midterms, it finally happens. With data readily available, you can easily look at the percentage points won by either candidate and compare them to 2020. So then you note that every state that Biden took in 2020, Kamala won by less percentage points. And even in my home state of California, while the votes have not all the way been counted yet, don't know why, Biden took California with 63%, while Harris is at around 58 to 59%. Still a worse percentage than Clinton. And take a look at this gem from election night to show you how well Harris has performed.
So you asked, are there any places that the vice president is overperforming Joe Biden in 2020? So we could show you that as well. We just bring that out here. Harris overperforming in 2020.
Holy smokes.
There you go. So let this go away and see if there's anything on the east side there.
Literally nothing?
Literally nothing.
Literally not one county?
By 3% or more.
Classic. Now, what about voter turnout? Well, let's go back even as far as the Obama days. 2008, rounding the numbers up, Obama racked up nearly 70 million to McCain's 60 million. 2012, Obama 66 to Mitt Romney's 61 million. 2016, yes, Hillary won the popular vote with 66 million votes, so basically doing about the same as Obama, but Trump got 63 million, which was enough to massacre Hillary on the electoral vote. And then, of course, 2020, Trump actually gained 11 million votes in his re-election bid, ending up with over 74 million, only for Joe Biden to acquire 81 million votes, a total turnout of over 155.5 million votes between the two candidates. And I know that people are going to say 2020 was an anomaly year. Well, you decide, given the fact that 2024 still had a total of over 150 million votes between Harris and Trump. That's roughly the same. So they have been doing a good job at getting people to vote compared to what it was like in 2012 and 2016. More people are voting, it seems. Annoying Orange Man currently has over 76.4 million popular votes versus Cackling Hyena with 73.7 at the time of this recording. And this is very near when the final tallies are being counted. So the number is just going to go up very slightly for both candidates. But I still do not see Kamala overtaking the popular vote. Now, with Kamala Harris voters, we can all agree that there were three main categories that voted for her. You had the never Trumpers, regardless of what party they are. You had the vote blue no matter who, so the people that always vote Democrat no matter what. And then, of course, it was the people who just voted for Kamala because she was a woman of color. Many people within all three groups decided abortion rights was a bigger issue than the economy, or their democracy was a bigger issue. Kamala not only did just as good as Trump did in 2020, but also managed to acquire more votes than Barack Obama, the Democrat Lord and Savior, ever could. And she managed to do this without his charisma, his charm, no promised big plan, nor ability to connect with the viewers. Imagine if she had even a shred of Barack's charisma, or even a set big plan that actually resonated with people. So does the fact that she did just as good as she did despite a disastrous campaign and a disastrous administration that she was part of reflect the level of intelligence of most of her voters? Or a sheer indicator that the mainstream media still manipulates enough people? That's up for you to decide. Some of you have listened to the podcast episodes when we talked politics. You know who I'm talking about, but that still begs the question. How did we go from 11 million Democrat votes down to 74 million roughly? Where did all those extra millions of Biden votes go to? Well, we can say either 2020 was such an anomaly year with people glued to their screens due to being forced to stay home during COVID lockdowns, and thus they felt mail-in voting was the convenient way to do it, even if they had never voted before or since, while constantly being manipulated by the media about how bad Trump was. And then 4 years later, millions of voters disapproved of the performance of the Biden-Harris administration, and they decided to take the cheeseburger that is Donald Trump over the tepid gruel that was the Biden-Harris administration, or they just abstained this time. Either all of that, or maybe there was a little foul play with the 2020 mail-ins. It's not like we don't remember that massive 3 a.m. dump that caused a huge spike in Biden votes to overtake Trump's big lead. Or maybe it was a little bit of both. Who really knows? Either way, 2020 is ancient history at this point. And what matters now is what's going to happen now in January 2029 when Trump's second term officially ends. America this time has clearly spoken. Not only has Trump outperformed his two prior campaigns, but we're also looking at a House and Senate majority for the Republicans too. And this is Trump, not in 2016 when he's fresh off being a celebrity. This is Trump after 2 impeachment attempts, the whole Russian collusion narrative that was never proven, the hush money scandal that they turned into election meddling, the 4 criminal indictments totaling over 80 to 90 charges, being formally convicted of one of those indictments with 34 felony counts for falsifying business records related to that hush money scandal, 8 years of constantly being called a threat to democracy by the media and the political opponents, being compared to Hitler, along with being called a Nazi or a fascist, and let's not forget 2 assassination attempts that we know of on this guy. And he still got more votes than the sitting vice president of the United States, and still got more votes than he did in his other 2 election bids. That should say something. Your administration has to be that bad at your job if millions more would rather vote for this guy than you. Even if Donald Trump is what people say he is, American voters remember Trump being in office before COVID versus Biden's administration during and after. They also remember the Biden administration overseeing the following: Record inflation, with everything costing more and blue-collar people not being able to afford basic amenities. Way too many environmental regulations, such as shutting down pipelines and fucking with our infrastructure and supply lines, leading to fuel, energy, and supply shortages. Going from being energy independent to relying on buying foreign oil from places like the Middle East and Russia, creating more fuel costs in our country just so we can please the tree huggers that said, no, we can't drill. No, don't drill. You had a botched operation with getting our troops out of Afghanistan, giving the enemy billions of dollars worth of military-grade equipment to use against us and our allies, trading a famous war criminal nicknamed the Merchant of Death to Russia for a bitchy anti-American WNBA star who got caught with stuff that was illegal in Russia, 2 major wars being started and the U.S. sending billions of dollars to these foreign countries to fund their wars, further decreasing the value of our own dollar. At the same time that happens when Americans face natural disasters and only receive small chump change in return for comparison. An absolute horrendous immigration policy leading to millions of illegals flooding in each year. Then, of course, a lot of lefties were pissed off when Roe v. Wade got overturned. And then you had the Biden-Harris administration supporting policies that allowed biological men to compete against biological women in sports while screwing up Title IX rights to women in the process. And then, of course, supporting movements that allowed minors to transition while they themselves were still not old enough to be eligible to vote, drive, get tattoos, drink alcohol, do drugs, or work most jobs. So they're not old enough to do all that stuff, but they're old enough to decide what their gender is. And then during the pandemic, don't think we didn't forget about this, pushing for vaccines to be forced onto Americans or they couldn't be allowed to work certain jobs or even do things like go to a ball game or a concert or a tourist attraction, etc. Don't think I don't remember what it was like in my LA job when we had to have vaccine checkpoints there. It was shitty. So after 4 years of all the things I just mentioned, it is no wonder he was the president with the lowest approval rating in history. People from both sides hated how this administration was performing. And while this was happening, what did they keep doing? They kept blaming Donald Trump or anyone that disagreed with the Biden-Harris administration. Oh, they're just a bunch of sexists, they're racist, they're bigots. Trump is a Nazi, he's Hitler, he's a fascist, he fucked a porn star, even though I would do that too, but still, he's a horrible person, he's a threat to democracy. I mean, even when Trump wasn't in office, the media and the government kept paying so much attention to him that Trump may as well have been the 46th president of the United States. I mean, upon being elected, Joe Biden promised that, we're going to unite the people under our leadership, only for him to further alienate half the country by calling MAGA supporters and any other people that disagreed with him as extremists and domestic terrorists in one of his very first speeches after being inaugurated. And this shit was non-stop, and it bled into pop culture too. You didn't like a movie or a TV show? You didn't care for the direction or the writing? No, it's because you're a horrible person. Calling out the obvious DEI push in casting and workplace hiring? Nah, you're racist, you're both this, WW2 faction that, blah, blah, blah. How many well-established companies and popular intellectual property franchises and movies and TV shows and video games and anything else of the sort become part of the culture wars even when they didn't want to be? And finally, after 3 to 4 years, especially after his disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump over the summer, more people saw how even more gone Joe Biden was by 2024, despite the media boasting, oh no, Biden's the sharpest he's ever been. More and more people were clearly seeing the lies pushed by the media. It was obvious by this point he was basically Smitty from King of the Hill, way past his cognitive abilities and growing even more senile by the second. Compared to Donald Trump, Joe Biden was clearly drooling on the floor and had chewing gum and oatmeal where his brain used to be. So the Democrats forced Joe Biden out, which I will still say was the right move. Biden was clearly out of his mind at this point, and the media couldn't lie about his health and mental capacity anymore. I would do the same thing even if it was on the other side. If the person you elected is clearly not there anymore, get him out. And also because of the obvious signs. Early polling showed that people would vote for a generic NPC Democrat over Trump if Joe Biden was out. All right, now is the time to give the Democrat voters their chance for their voices to be heard, and they're going to cast their vote in the 2024 primary.
Nope.
President Biden is now endorsing his vice president.
Oh, Biden just endorsed Kamala right away, and thus she was installed as the candidate. No democratic voting process needed, I guess. Oh, but they were planning on an open primary, but then Biden endorsed Harris almost immediately, so it forced him to go along with it. So let me get this straight. The Democratic Party essentially staged a coup to force Biden out of his re-election campaign, like a resistant senile grandparent getting his car keys taken away, and yet they still went along with him endorsing her? Last I checked, if you're staging a coup or a mutiny, that essentially means you stop listening to the person you're turning against, right?
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President, thank you. Donald, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition.
It's no wonder why after the election, Biden was all smiles when he met Trump and promised a peaceful transition. I guess he wasn't the existential threat to democracy they kept saying he was. Or Biden just didn't like he was being forced out, so him endorsing Harris without an open primary was probably one final fuck you to the party that turned on him. And again, the least popular vice president in history associated heavily with the failed administration just gets installed by non-democratic means. So much the party for democracy. Despite that, a month and a half before the election, there was still this growing enthusiasm for Harris. Like she was this big knight in shining armor, and she started out leading Trump in the early polls. Oh yeah, Kamala Harris has the lead.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
What's all gone?
It didn't do too well. It's gone.
All of that goodwill went out of the window the more Kamala's campaign continued to fail. You have to look at both campaigns and think, well, despite Trump significantly being older, he managed a rigorous campaign schedule with rallies that attracting thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, constantly doing event after event, appearance after appearance. He literally went from podcasts to fly over to another state to do a rally and that he was late to. And even in the face of death in Butler, Pennsylvania, raised his fist in defiance and got the crowd to keep chanting, fight, fight, fight. And during the final few weeks, Trump was doing things to appeal to the everyday American, such as that McDonald's shift stunt, or appearing on Joe Rogan's podcast, which is only the most listened to podcast on the planet, where he could appear as just a normal person. And at the same time, there were people that had been pushed out of the Democrat Party once they stopped falling in their line. They were now siding with Trump, such as RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Elon Musk. And right before the election day, even Joe Rogan was endorsing him. And who was siding with Kamala? Well, they had Liz and Dick Cheney. The warmongers? What kind of bizarre world are we living in where the pot-smoking comedian, someone who supported Bernie Sanders in 2020 and even had Bernie on his show back then, now endorsed Trump in 2024, but the warmongering Republican endorsed Kamala? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Amazing how things change after 20 years. Yes, Trump won in 2016, but the country was still in the process of a huge blue wave since the Obama days, especially in government, workforce, culture, entertainment. And I don't really like to say the word, but let's just say yes, America was getting more woke, as they say. And the pendulum kept shifting well into Biden's term until people from both sides finally had enough of it when things started going too far. I mean, you can only have so many penis sightings in the women's locker rooms and so many trans women beating biological women in sports before that issue raised enough alarms. And you can only sacrifice enough good and compelling stories in the newest Star Wars shows in favor of DEI checkboxes so much before people stop watching the shitty shows. The list goes on and on. So yes, there is a radical change in political votes, it seems, now that the pendulum is shifting back to the red. Hence, the classic idea of left versus right just kind of seems to be intermixing. A few years ago, it was Democrats pushing for open borders and defund the police bullshit. But once that went out of control, all of a sudden it was, yeah, secure the borders, back the cops. While Republicans have relaxed their stances on drugs and abortion. People in Missouri literally voted to make abortion a right in their state while also selecting Trump to be president. I mean, it felt like 20 years ago, it was Democrats and liberals who were all for freedom of expression and freedom of speech, regardless if anyone agreed. And nowadays, if someone speaks out and says something they think is too offensive, they go out on crusades to cancel the offender and blame everyone else around it by association. Pretty much, oh, we only want to hear opinions that match our own because we don't want to get our feelings hurt. What's that called again when you try to get the government to weaponize the erasure of free speech? Or when government agencies essentially get big tech to shadow ban and censor content that they deem as misinformation, even when it really isn't? Shifting gears, going over the campaign events and rallies, while Trump alone, yes, he did have his speakers and key figures in his campaign that could attract thousands of people to his rallies wherever he went, Trump was still the main attraction. When Kamala did her rallies and events, she relied on celebrity endorsements and appearances to get people to show up. We're talking people like Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Christina Aguilera, Ricky Martin, Megan Thee Stallion, Bruce Springsteen, John Bon Jovi, 2 Chainz, even some appearances from Eminem, Cardi B, Beyonce, and J-Lo, where they themselves didn't perform, which probably pissed off a lot of people. And that doesn't include the plethora of big-name celebrities that publicly endorsed her, like Taylor Swift, Leonardo DiCaprio, Usher, LeBron James, Mark Ruffalo, Martha Stewart. The list goes on and on. It was obvious that Hollywood was putting out all the stops to get the eyes on Kamala. Except there was one tiny issue. 6 of these people I just mentioned and highlighted were also named as people who attended P. Diddy parties. You know, the kind of, quote, freak-off parties, which involve multi-day sex orgies with heavy drug and alcohol use, plus large quantities of baby oil and lubricants, that led to this rapper being charged with sex trafficking, sex assault, and racketeering. Oops. As if these people should be lecturing us on who to vote for, including Cardi B, whose hit song literally means wet-ass pussy.
This is why some of y'all states be getting hurricanes. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's who should be lecturing me on morals? Yeah, we should all listen to Taylor Swift's choice, even though 90% of her catalog is her singing about choosing the wrong person. And yes, with all these celebrity endorsements and performances at her events, what exactly did their presence offer for Kamala? Nothing. What policies did they discuss and bring up in their speeches? None. And surely enough, people saw right through Hollywood and Kamala's bullshit. Kamala couldn't get through a speech without heavy use of a teleprompter, which once she had a meltdown Ron Burgundy style when the teleprompter malfunctioned.
Today we got 32 days until the election. So 32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end.
From the entire Channel 4 News team, I'm Veronica Corningstone.
And I'm Ron Burgundy. Go fuck yourself.
She also did interviews which were clearly heavily edited on purpose because she really wasn't answering any of the questions presented to her. It was almost as if she couldn't answer questions given to her straight. Like everything was always deflective or bounced off with shit like, well, I come from the middle class, or any other mix of word salad she came up with. Seriously, the way she was answering questions, if this was an academic setting, she'd fail. Oh, but it's the uneducated people that voted for Trump. Bullshit. And it wasn't just her. Tim Walz, her vice president pick, came off as a blithering idiot whose blatant lies over his military service and other claims were easily debunked. And this is the guy who created a hotline in his state that allowed people to call the government and snitch on people who were not complying with COVID restrictions. And of course, let his state burn down during the George Floyd riots because he claimed to agree with their sentiment. Yeah, this man, nicknamed the Minnesota Marxist, definitely has my vote after all that. Day by day, she kept up the same uninspired, phony persona that did little to attract anyone but patients suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. You know how Joe Rogan had Trump on for 3 hours unscripted in a studio? Kamala demanded Joe fly out to their location and was only allowed to do an hour, prompting Joe to say, no, that's not how we're going to do it. Nowadays, most people are getting their political news and opinions from YouTube videos and podcasts, not from the mainstream media anymore. So they don't trust CNN or MSNBC and Fox News to an extent. Oh, but Kamala appeared on a podcast. Yeah, an obscure porn podcast. Nothing even scratching the territory that podcasts like Rogan or Theo Von had. Harris had every unearned opportunity thrown at her like a 2020 DEI hire, and rather than appear as her true bitchy, ruthless persona that she was previously known for as district attorney and attorney general, her cackling Kamala persona just came off as phony and out of touch with everyday Americans who were pissed off they couldn't afford their amenities. She was also caught trying to pander to both sides between Israel and Hamas supporters in this country, releasing commercials claiming to side with their respective side. Did she or her campaign really think that Jewish and Muslim people are stupid? It's no wonder that there are more Jewish and Islamic votes for Trump this time. And what was her main thing that she was campaigning on? What was her big policy plans that would change things? Donald Trump is bad. Okay, sure. Anything else? Doesn't Donald Trump just suck?
Mrs. Griffin, what do you plan to do about crime in our city?
A lot. Because that's what Jesus wants. 9/11 was bad.
I agree with that. What are your plans for cleaning up our environment?
9/11.
What about our traffic problem?
9/11.
Kamala really didn't have anything to offer except Trump bad, which was very typical of the Democrats in 2016 and 2020. It failed in 16. It would have failed in 2020 if not for the pandemic, and it failed again in 2024. Democrats consistently have had nothing for the past 8 years. Kamala could have distanced herself from the Biden administration and easily have publicly said, yes, I was vice president, but I regret these policies that made things worse. I promise I won't do them again. And here is my big policies that will fix things. But no, by saying that she wouldn't change anything about her time as vice president, she cemented her association with the failed Biden term forever. It eventually came out that Kamala's campaign managed to raise and blow through over $1.4 billion in such a short amount of time. And aside from reportedly paying celebrities millions of dollars, she ended up $20 million in debt. Now I feel even better that she will not be overseeing our country's economy.
9/11.
You moron!
Meanwhile, Trump presented the big ideas. Fix the economy, fix the border policies, fix the foreign policies, get the government operating more efficiently, become energy independent. Whether you like those ideas, whether you think they are good or not, at least he had them. Kamala didn't. At the end of the day, the collapse of the Democratic Party from 2020 to 2024 is something for historians to study. It's one of those things where it's like William Hurt asking this question.
How do you fuck that up? How do you fuck that up?
Perhaps the cracks started to show even as early as 2016 when Clinton got the Democrat nominee over Bernie Sanders. A lot of people were pissed off that Bernie didn't get nominated because once the 2024 election was over, it was this same Bernie Sanders who left a scathing statement saying It should come as no great surprise that the Democrat Party, which has abandoned working class people, should find that the working class has abandoned them. Say what you will about Bernie, but in this case, he's 100% right. 20 years ago, it felt like conservative Republicans were behind the times, especially on social issues such as healthcare, abortion, fair wages, and LGBTQ rights. They were seen as the stuck-up, non-compassionate people, while the Democrats were the ones fighting the establishment and lobbying for social liberal issues. Now, it's obvious that the Democrats are behind the times. They look at conservatives as if they're the rebels against the establishment, and they still think that fake-ass, polished politicians are who the people want. And somehow, after 3 election cycles, they fail to see that it isn't what they want. They want authenticity. They want someone real, or to seem real. It's like in pro wrestling. Sometimes the smiling babyface hero fails to connect with the crowd and gets rejected by the fans because the fans see right through the nice, dignified, and noble but phony persona. While the heelish prick's ruthless aggression attitude resonates with the crowd because they share his same sentiments. Donald Trump is an asshole by all means. He's an arrogant prick and can be very shrewd as a businessman when it comes to getting things done. But that's what over 76 million Americans want. They want someone they think will get shit done, even if he's totally lying to them, like a lot of politicians do. Voters vote for the person they think something might happen if they do. And that is the game. Democrats, time and time again, for years, kept celebrating their victory way too early. Oh, happy day, this house got raided. Yes, he got arrested. That means he can't be president, right? Oh, he got impeached again. That means he won't be president again, right?
Oh, fuck yes. He got all these federal indictments and criminal charges. Oh my God, he got convicted and found guilty. Break out the champagne. Let's start celebrating. That means he can't be president, right? Wait, no? He's still in the game?
What? Someone tried to kill him and he missed? Who was the one holding the gun? The cross-eyed asshole from Spaceballs? Holy shit! Joe Biden is out! Kamala's the nominee! You go, girl! She did so great against Trump in the debate. We got the media saying that she's gonna win. All of these lefty YouTubers are predicting she'll win. It's in the bag, Democrats. 2024 is all year, and we're finally gonna have a woman president.
The Fox News decision desk can now officially project that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Donald face back, swoosh, and that's the game!
Now, I do want to talk about the celebrity meltdowns after the election, but we'll have to wait for the next burgers and fries at the diner, which is still open for business. I'm Desert Coyote 22. Thanks for listening.